Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining the Sierra Club Iowa chapter for our weekly Lunch and Learn. Every Friday at noon, we go live with an environmentally focused topic, bringing in experts and advocates to share their knowledge and insights. Today, we are so grateful to be joined by Marlene Erzman, Executive Director of the Iowa Wildlife Center. Marlene has dedicated decades of her life to conservation, community leadership, and the care of Iowa's wildlife. From her early inspiration sparked by a turkey vulture in 1970 to her extensive work in nonprofit leadership, land conservation, and wildlife biology, her passion and experience runs deep. Today, Marlene will share insights into wildlife rehabilitation in Iowa and the incredible work being done at the Iowa Wildlife Center to care for injured and orphaned animals. We're thankful for her time, expertise, and lifelong commitment to protecting the wild neighbors we share this state with. So please join me in welcoming Marlene.
Hi, everybody. So nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So can I just go ahead and get started?
Yeah, just roll
All
into
right.
it.
Here, this is going to be different for me, everybody, because I can't see you and interact with you. So I'm going to interact with you through her. So, and this is going to be, I'm not going to have any right now. I don't have any animals that I'm going to hold up for you. That'll come a little bit later if you want. But this is going to be different because I'm going to be showing you behind the scenes in our current Iowa Wildlife Center facility. And you'll be able to see why we're working really hard to change that. But for now, we're in the second floor of the town center building, downtown Ames. We just rent a couple of office spaces, and people come up the stairs, and you're just going to, if you have an animal, this is where you come. And this is it. You just come to our door, ring our doorbell, and then we will bring you out a form. We have you sit out here in the hallway because we don't have any space back in our facility. So, and you'll see that in a minute too. We used to bring people in, and then if you remember COVID, we shut it all down to keep everybody safe. I let a lot of volunteers go and just had a couple plus me. Since then, we did hire our animal patient manager, Jenna Mogg. You'll meet her in a minute. And she's been with us full time for about 3 years now, a graduate of Iowa State University. And we're looking to hire at least 2 more positions within the next year. So we are growing, and it is pretty exciting to be sharing this with you all about some of our future. So I'm going to take you back into the office now. Nothing exciting about this hallway. I will say that we have to wash a lot of our everything really in the restroom here in the building that people use. So we have to be really careful about disinfecting after we use it and keeping it nice and neat and tidy. Again, this is probably the worst case scenario for trying to run a busy wildlife rehabilitation center. And it's also one reason that we limit ourselves so much to the species that we take in as well as the numbers of animals, because we just can't do it at the level we could be doing it at in this facility. So this is, and I will back up to say, most of you know who we are, but the Iowa Wildlife Center has a mission. It's a 3-pronged mission to provide professional wildlife rehabilitation services to native Iowa species. And there are a couple of those species that we don't take in, and for different reasons, and we can talk about that later, to provide professional wildlife education programming to the public, and to provide wildlife assistance skills training to our volunteers, to other rehabilitators, to interested public who want to help out. So that's the 3-pronged part of our mission. So we incorporated in 2010. We started visioning this in 2007. And I have 2 co-founders. One now lives on Vancouver Island, and the other one is in northern Minnesota, where she's always lived. Elaine Thrun is still, she comes down frequently to stay for several days to help out here, and she's still on the board of directors for our organization. She served on the National Wildlife Rehabilitators Association board for 16 years as president and at 40 years as a board member. And she's just going off the board finally. So she is, and she was a rehabilitator. She was part of St. Cloud State University. And so she and her husband both are wildlife biologists, as I am, and as my husband Bruce Erzman is, who many of you also know. All right, so this is our office for our staff and our volunteers. Not much to it, just a small room that's cramped and crowded. We have PPE going on here always, but it's heightened right now simply because of avian influenza. And so you can see over here, you've got all the volunteers have to put on these Crocs because they're easily disinfected and cleaned and everything. So that's one of the PPE criteria we have. Other criteria we have to be able to volunteer here, we need to have proof of vaccinations for COVID. And that's a whole discussion, but I'm not messing around with that because COVID can be transferred back and forth between species, not easily, but you remember in the early days of the pandemic, a tiger at a zoo out on the East Coast was really the first animal, non-human animal to come down with it, and it got it from its keeper. So we know that there is transmission back and forth, and we want to keep everybody safe. A lot of us here have autoimmune issues, so we want to keep the staff and the volunteers safe. So that's one thing. Having rabies pre-exposure vaccinations is also required if we're going to work with any of our rabies vector species, which we do accept. And that's what we're kind of known for, is working with fox and bats and skunks and things like that. And those are considered rabies vector species. So that's one other requirement. And then tetanus, just some of the basic things to keep yourselves healthy when you're working in an environment like this. Okay, and I wanted to show you this. Sorry, I try not to spin this around so you get dizzy. We own 75 acres of land. We got a nice, healthy donation early on when someone came and asked if I would want to start an organization that would support wildlife rehabilitation in Iowa. And I, had already been doing it for, 35 years or so in my own home and working at Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation for over a decade. I thought, do I really want to do this? But really, it has been one of my life goals to do this. And so I said yes, and the rest is history. But with that initial donation, I'm a firm believer, with my wildlife biology background, I'm a firm believer in having habitat available for these animals that we take in. We can take in all these individual animals, and it's not going to matter if they don't have good habitat in which to release them. So we bought 75 acres of land. I looked long and hard for the right land. Let's see if I can get this angled right. And so you can see that it's got, we've been reconstructing prairie, and it's got a nice savanna we've been restoring. It's got some wetlands we'll be restoring, and it's just a really nice place. It's about a half a mile south of the Ledges State Park campground. So we're in the Des Moines River corridor, which is perfect because, as you all know, river corridors are some of the remaining habitat left for these animals to cross country. And so that's really important, I think, for us to be part of a river corridor. It was sold to us at a bargain sale price by the former owners. They wanted to see this happen on their property, and we are so grateful to them, and they're still involved with us. So they still believe in what we're doing. We're not doing everything wrong. All right. And then we have more plans for Wildway. This is hard to see. Should have had a slide of this. Sorry. Anyway, it's the master site plan for Wildway. And so we have already been developing trails throughout the land. We're not going to allow the public on all of Wildway. Wildway is what we call the 75 acres. Because we believe that some places need to just be reserved for the wild. And then some places on this property will be reserved for the patients that are recovering. And then this corner piece that we've been developing as far as trails and interpretive signage will be for the public. And we have lots of other exciting news to share in the next couple of years, but I'm going to hold off on that and you guys can have me come back maybe. But lots of good things going on. And my husband, Bruce, when he retired from the DNR after, I don't know, his 40 some year stint there, he decided he wanted to take on stewardship of this really special, unique place as his retirement project. So he has been doing a phenomenal job reconstructing the prairie and everything. And most of you know Carl Kurtz. We've used his seed, John Judson's seed. We have people on our stewardship committee like Tom Rosberg. So we have people in working with us that are experts in their fields to help us make this the best it can be. So, and this site plan was designed by Julia Badenhol, professor at Iowa State in the landscape architecture department. And she's been on the board. She just went off the board, but she's still helping us see this to fruition. Okay, so ready to see a few animals? And I'm happy to take questions as we go along. I can get started and I'll just launch into something. So if I skip something or if something intrigues you and you want to stop and ask a question about it, then Brianna will tell me about that.
I
All
was going to
right.
say, we do have one question. When you were talking about the avian influenza, is there anything that people can kind of do to protect if they're feeding birds in their backyard or anything like that, that they can do to help protect the birds so they don't have to come to you, hopefully?
Yeah, and yeah, that's avian influenza. It sort of has been really hot this year. So, in fact, Ada Hayden Heritage Park here, just on the edge of Ames, is a hot spot for Iowa. So we have a team that I created several years ago to collect carcasses. So scavengers and such don't spread it. They'll come in and scavenge. Raptors really succumb quickly within 24 hours, especially the diurnal raptors, like eagles and things will succumb quickly. We know fox pups, if a mother comes and takes a carcass back to the den, pups will succumb pretty quickly. So as far as, so we're trying to clean up to prevent more spread. And so this has been a really busy year for our team and they have to be careful and they're all trained for cold water. Rescues and things, but still we keep them safe. And if they can't get out on the ice safely, even with all that training, they just don't go. But as far as backyard birds and what people can do, it doesn't seem to affect backyard birds, waterfowl primarily, and geese out of that primarily, although we have had, I think, 4 trumpeter swans, 2 juveniles and 2 adults that tested positive this winter so far. And the rest have been Canada geese. So we're working so people can, if you're out walking at a place like any of the reservoirs or anything, anything with trails around the water, stay away from where the waterfowl are. Don't let your dogs loose running amidst them. I would suggest certainly cleaning your shoes, washing and disinfecting your shoes, the soles of your shoes, so you don't transmit it elsewhere. But songbirds don't seem to be affected by it at this point, but pelicans are affected. And you can certainly call our office, and we could see what we could do. But typically, geese can recover, but it's not highly likely that a lot of them will recover once they get it, as far as I know. So there's not a lot we can do. A lot of times we'll test for it. If it's positive, we keep them isolated away from of all of our other animals. And so that's hard here. So we have to use a basement room that's just been abandoned. And so not perfect, but keeps them isolated anyway until we can get them tested. If they're positive, we euthanize. And if they're not, then they can come up into our general population of patients. And you'll see one of those birds, an American bittern, in a little bit. But that's a good question. Okay, anything else before I go on?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. So we have lots of different setups for different species. There are requirements by both the federal government and the state government for our permits, our wildlife rehabilitation permits. And we always follow the standards set up by the National Wildlife Rehabilitators Association and the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council. And that really dictates the size of enclosures, the types of bedding, and things like that. So we really try and follow that. It's for the benefit of the patients that we have too. All these animals are stressed when they come in. We're a predator to them, so we really try and keep that in mind. So you're not going to see some of these animals because in this tank, for example, somewhere in there is a garter snake, and it was found by a photographer when he was down at Saylorville. They found it stuck in landscape mesh. We get a lot of snakes stuck in landscape mesh. And so the snakes will get through the mesh. And if they're lucky, they can get all the way through if they're small enough, but they typically will get stuck and then they can't get out. And so it came in with several constriction injuries. And so it's been got this in early December. And so we're still caring for it and waiting for it to shed for the first time to see if it's healed well enough then that it can be released in spring. We have high hopes for it. It seems to be on track. And then in this enclosure, see if I can let you see this one. This That's a lovely large painted turtle. And she came in early January, I think. I don't have the rest of her paperwork with me. And she had some injuries, so we're keeping her for the winter now and see what develops. Oh, this one's a fun one. This is one of our education animals. This is a Blandings turtle, and as a lot of you know, it's a state endangered species. She's an active girl. They're so cute. She likes to interact with people. They're just really a sweet species. And so she can't be released. She'd been in captivity, illegal pet, and she definitely came in with some partial paralysis, I believe. And so they've been doing physical therapy on her. She's not releasable when these animals have been in possession of the public for who knows how long, who knows where it came from. It's against the state does not want us to release, especially turtles and snakes, because they could then harbor some bacterial or viral infections that we don't catch and then transmit that to wild populations. And that would not be a good thing. So,
And we
so
do have
Blandon, go ahead.
we do have another question. Somebody asked, what are the most common wildlife that you see in rehabilitation in Iowa?
Common, yeah. So we just went from one of the only Blandings turtle we've ever gotten in, and they're both the terrestrial turtle as well as an aquatic turtle. Whereas the painted turtle that you saw is an aquatic turtle. And the painted turtles we get in pretty frequently. They're probably our most common turtle that we get in. And as far as the most common species, if we took them all in, we don't take raccoons. That's one species we just do not, because we would be quickly overwhelmed with them, and we just can't. So, and there are plenty of rehabilitators around the state that do take raccoons. People often get started rehabilitation by taking care of the more common species, like your raccoons, your cottontails, your possums, your fox squirrels, fawns, back when people could rehabilitate fawns. Of course, now because of chronic wasting disease, no rehabilitator can work with any deer of any age because of that. But so right now, I would say the most common species that we take in would probably be all the bunnies that dogs find in their backyards. Bunnies and squirrels are probably two of the top species that we get in. Is that correct? I'm going to step in here to the exam room and I'll let Jenna answer that question. This is our wildlife patient coordinator or manager. I will get that right one of these days. This is Jenna Mogg, everybody. She's awesome. So Jenna, the question just came in about what species was the most common species that we see.
Well, it depends every year, but usually the most common ones like possum, squirrel, bunny, are up there. And then bats usually are pretty high up on that list too, especially during the hibernation season.
Yep. Yeah. So I was not far off. So I don't work hands on with the animals much anymore because I have Jenna and she's so awesome. I don't need to. So I always have to ask her these questions. Now, I hope that answers your question. We talk about more specifically about bats in a bit, but behind me, then Jenna has set up this sampling station, and she can tell you a little bit about the research projects that we're working on. Again, we want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. So the more research we do, non-invasive research with these animals and in collaboration with other entities, I think that's a really crucial role for our wildlife center. And here's Jenna to talk about that a little bit.
Um, so we're working on a few different studies here. So we're working with Minnesota Department of Public Health and the University of Minnesota to look at HPAI and SARS-CoV-2 surveillance in mammals and birds, especially waterfowl. Um, so I think Marlene mentioned earlier about HPAI and Ames. When we go out and collect carcasses, which to date, just for this winter season, it's been about 100 carcasses just from one site. Then I go out there and we swab and then we send those samples off for testing. And so far, everything's come back positive for HPAI. So that's trumpeter swans and primarily geese out of those samplings so far. So we have a station here that I have all those samples ready to go so we can just grab and go for those. So we're looking at that. We'll also be looking at antimicrobial resistance in reptiles here in the spring, summer. And that would be looking for kind of like E. coli. And then we're also working with the state of Iowa Natural Resources to look at white nose syndrome in bats. So I'm also testing those bats for HPAI and SARS-CoV-2, even though we feel like those are pretty low numbers. And so far, all of those have come back negative. All the mammals we've sent have come back negative. But we just started the sampling for white nose syndrome. Every bat that comes in, we test them with actually an ultraviolet light. It's a certain spectrum, and we look for any fluorescence that that may be indicative of white nose syndrome. But this is an additional test for that we would be swabbing their mouths and their wing membranes, and then that would be sent off for sampling. Also, in this little nook, we are looking at fecals. So I actually just got done looking at a fecal. So we have some microscopes here and some slides, everything we need to look at fecals. So we've been testing just routine fecals when patients come in. I mean, wildlife usually harbors some bacteria or viruses, and that can be shed in their stool. So the one that I got done actually just had 3 bacteria in its poop. So that's a possum, and he wasn't wanting to eat earlier this week. So that could be a sign of why he wasn't wanting to eat. Maybe his tummy just felt a little upset with that bacteria. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll do more testing, more fecals to make sure that that bacteria is not prolific and that he's able to take care of that on his own because it is a very low amount right now.
Okay, thanks, Jenna.
Yeah.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
You're welcome.
I always put her on the spot. That's nothing new to her. Okay, so, and we have over in this corner, we have different, again, remember I said we have different enclosures for the different species of hospital patients. And so this is just one of those big Rubbermaid stock tanks. And then one of our volunteers made this lid that can be latched onto the top of the stock tank. And so things can't escape out of it. But this is right now where the possum is trying to recover. And we won't bother it. And then this one, let's see if we can see it. You'll be able to hear it. All right. I don't know if you saw any of that, if you heard the growl. I'm not going to bother it anymore. But that was the American bittern. And they sound like dinosaurs, right, Jenna? It's like the first time we heard that growl, it was really startling to us. That was brought to us by Adam Janke, who's a professor at Iowa State in the Natural Resources Department. He was up hunting in a county north of us, and he called me one Sunday afternoon and he said, Marlene, I've got a bittern for you. It was back in November when it was so December 3rd. Okay, early December, December 3rd, Jenna said. So it was a lot of snow on the ground. It was bitterly cold, and here was this bittern. Not right. It should have migrated out. They're a species of concern here in Iowa, definitely. So we were glad to take it, and not that they have to be of concern to take it, but it was one of those unique species that we don't often get to work with, and it was something that we could handle this time of year. And we have some expertise with handling different kinds of shorebirds. So it was emaciated, but otherwise it didn't appear to have any injuries on it at all. And so Jenna and the volunteers have been working fervently as raising money for fish that they buy at a bait shop in Des Moines, and then transporters, volunteer transporters, bring the fish up to us. This bird eats a lot. So, and it's now gained a lot of weight, and it's had its flight test out at Wildway and some of our larger outdoor enclosures, and it flies just fine. So it's ready to go. The problem we're going to have is getting it south from here now. And so Jenna's been working on getting the proper permits to take them across state lines, working with the DNR, working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to get those permits in place. And then we'll be able to either drive them down. If someone wants to do a road trip with a nice stinky American bittern, that'd be great. Or we'll fly it down to Baton Rouge, and the veterinary college down there, their wildlife section is going to take it and do a final exam, and then get it to a rehabilitator down there for some strength training, at which it will need, just like us, when we're laid up for any length of time, we have to get our strength back, get our muscles working again. So that's the next step for this guy. So it's a success story at this point. Anything else you want to say about that? Okay. Jenna teaches me well. I always have to ask her for all this information. Okay, we're going into another room unless anyone has any questions about what we've seen so far.
There is one. What injuries do you see kind of the most throughout the year?
What injury? I'm glad Jenna stayed here and didn't go eat lunch with her husband.
So it kind of depends on the animal. So we often see similar injuries, like all possums tend to come in with similar injuries. Waterfowl seem to come in with similar injuries. I would say, if I had to say just blanket across, would be hit by a car. So a lot of these animals come in from human-caused interactions, whether direct or indirect. Hit by car is one of the top ones, so we see a lot of fractures, dislocations, just open wounds. And so depending on the species and depending on where that injury is and how significant it is would determine if we can help it through rehabilitation, or if it would be more humane for euthanasia if we're not able to like reset that fracture.
Good, thanks. And also in the, I mentioned bunnies being found by dogs in their backyard. So dog or cat caught animals is high on the list as well, and cats. Especially here in Ames, we're lucky because we have a leash law, which includes both dogs and cats. And so there aren't supposed to be any free roaming cats around here. And so we've really promoted catios, and several of our supporters and volunteers have built catios, and my son's built a catio. And it's a life-changing thing for people with cats who used to let them run loose, and to all of a sudden have them with this wonderful enclosed area that they can be safe in, and that they can enjoy being outdoors too. So if anyone has any questions about that, you can contact me later, and I'd be happy to talk to you about catios. But it's really important to get these cats under control and not just free roaming. No, I don't believe in trap, neuter, and return. So there's that. Anyway, but don't get me started on that. Okay, so here we are in another room, and you'll see over here, this is Kim. Kim's awesome. She's one of our senior volunteers, not in age by any means, but in age as well. But when she retired from Iowa State, she did have some time on her hands, and she found us, and she's been with us ever since. And she really has saves our skins more days than you can ever imagine. But this is the recovery room, where after they're examined and treated in the room that I started with Jenna, this is where they end up in more hospital type enclosures that when we have room for them. And you can see it's a small room, right? So here, all those ice cream buckets have bats. And I believe these are all big brown bats. That's our number one species that we get in, especially to overwinter. And so all of these bats, and Kim right now is feeding bats. And you can see she's got mealworms on the scale. Well, hold it up. I can't get it in view. Thank you. Yeah, so she just weighs out mealworms. The mealworms, all of our food, all the prey items have to be really nutritious too. So we feed all of these animals and insects highly nutritious food before they're fed to these animals. So in this, see if I can, let me take the lid off. Well, you can. Okay, if you want to. She's going to take the lid off, and we'll see if we can get a look at him. Yeah, there's one of our big brown bats. So he's not flying away. They get used to being in captivity. They're smart animals. I love bats. They're smart. Kim likes them too. Jenna likes them too. Anyone who starts working with bats really ends up liking them. They're small, so they can be hard to take care of. It can be hard to do eye exams. It can be hard to set bones because everything about them is tiny. But the good they do, the ecosystem services that they do. And so we are committed to being the leader in bat rehabilitation and bat care. So yeah, so we've got quite a bit of experience with them. And this is another one of our volunteers. Got to take advantage of this. This is Marlon. She's an Iowa State student. She's just been doing some of the many dishes that we collect. So yeah, this is kind of the central place for our animal care. Any questions about this kind of thing? Nothing? Okay. I will say over here, you see this wooden enclosure. That's where we keep raptors typically, and birds, turkey vultures, broadwing hawks, things like that, when they're in the hospital setting. And once they have recovered well enough, then they get moved out to Wildway to our pre-release enclosures out there. So it's just a step-by-step thing. All right, we're going to wander into the front room, which is where we house all of our education animals. So I don't know, what do you want to see? We have ornate box turtles. We have both male and female. We have a little painted turtle. Painted turtles are fun. I can see why people like to buy red-eared sliders and painted turtles at pet stores in other states. And then we end up with them because they don't want to keep them for the 40 or so years that they would live in captivity. We have a Cuban tree frog. You want to, I'm going to have Jenna see if she can get peed on by this Cuban tree frog. So, so people will call us every once in a while with frogs that have come in on houseplants. If any of you keep houseplants outside, check them over before you bring them in for the winter, because of course there are tree frogs, typically tree frogs, but also toads and leopard frogs and things will often be uh, taking up residence in houseplants. And then all of a sudden you find a frog in your house. Well, this is the same story with this beast. Oh, yeah. And it always, I don't know. This is a monster. This is a Cuban tree frog. If any of you have seen our tree frogs, they're tiny. This tree frog would eat, and it does eat, other native tree frogs and other native frogs and anything it can get its big mouth on in Florida, where it's become quite the invasive species. So thanks, Jennifer, getting your hands all mucked up. Um, so this was a case that someone found it on a house plant. It was turned over to a local pet store that we work with. And they knew that it was a tree frog, so they thought that it was a native tree frog. And they know they can't sell native wildlife, right? So they called us. I went down and got it. And I'm thinking, it was much smaller when we got it. But I'm thinking it's not our native tree frog. And then it was later that someone when I was given a program, they said, "Oh, I think that's a Cuban tree frog," and it is. So we kept it on to use for education, talking about invasive species, talking about how animals make it from one country to Iowa, and this is not an uncommon story to tell. And so it eats lots of mealworms and crickets, lots of crickets. Lots of crickets. Crickets are hard to keep alive and they don't stay nutritious more than I think 6 hours, from what I remember. Mealworms will stay nutritious for 24 hours if you feed them. But yeah, so it just depends. We have to learn all this stuff. All right, this is going to be a snake. So if someone doesn't like snakes, has a big phobia, look away. If you want to. Here. Jenna's going to get her out. That'll make it even better because she's gorgeous. So Scarlet came to us as a confiscation by a state conservation officer who thought it was a native milk snake. This is a Sinaloan milk snake. And she's just gorgeous. And so she's not native. We don't have to have her on any particular permit. So we just use her for education. And she is striking. People absolutely love her. People that come to start volunteering with us, if they don't like snakes, we don't demand that they take care of them or handle them. We have other people who would love to do that. But over time, almost everybody gets used to handling her, and we train everybody with proper handling techniques. And almost everybody, I only remember one person in all these years who never got used to snakes. Everyone else typically is wearing her around their necks by the time they are done with this. Jenna's nodding her head. You want to grab a box here? I want to talk about these, please. All right. So this is our big monster boy. Well, he's not going to come up. So I leave him alone. We give them the latitude of knowing what they want. If he doesn't want to be messed with, we don't mess with him. But that's Beef. That's our 55-pound snapping turtle. We've had him since he was a baby, about silver dollar size. And now he's over 55 pounds. And so he is our education animal. We teach volunteers how to handle wild snapping turtles by handling him. So people love him when we take him out in public. All right. On the other end of the spectrum, so he's fully aquatic. This is our fully terrestrial turtle, native to Iowa. This is an ornate box turtle and native to sand prairies in the state. And they're a threatened species. And they're very cool animals too. And they get their name box because they have a special hinge right there. And they can close themselves up. If he was terrified of us, which he's not, he would close himself up like a box. That still does not prevent him from getting predated by dogs and raccoons and things like that. So these were all illegal pets. And again, we can't release them into the wild because we don't know who they came from. And they usually come in with at least bacterial infections. And so that's just a really good, it's sad for them, but we give them the best. We keep improving their quarters and the husbandry as we learn more and more things about them, because to keep them happy and healthy, we have to give them the right quarters and nutrition and bedding and all that stuff. Light, UV, UVA, UVB, it's all important. So, okay. We do have educational bats. We do have an educational American toad. You know what an American toad looks like. You've already seen one of the bats, so don't need to get them out. But these can't be released because they have had injuries before they came to us, and they can't fly. So, and you know that bats, of course, are aerial predators of lots and lots of insects. If you can't fly, you're not going to be eating. So they make really good education animals. And yes, we call them sky puppies. And people do understand that when they see one up close and personal. All right, that's a little bit about what we do. Do we have any questions in general about education animals or about rehabilitation, about our future plans?
We do have a couple questions. Sarah asked, what should someone do or not do if they find an injured or orphaned wildlife? And do we take them to this location that you're at currently, or what should we do?
Good question. So always call anyone, wherever you are in the state, always call the rehabilitator first. You get the animal protected, but it's always good to get some input into how to handle the animal, so you don't get hurt and so the animal doesn't get hurt further. But people can always call us. We can help. We work statewide, so we can often help with at least information about that species. But in general, if you find something that is orphaned, that you think is orphaned, we need to make sure that it really is orphaned for sure. Because a lot of these animals really aren't, and we need to make sure that they are. Once that's determined, then putting it in a safe container, escape-proof container. You have no idea how many containers we've come and we're dumbfounded that the animal is in there. And sometimes they're not in there, so they've escaped somewhere. And making sure that you don't feed it. You don't even try and give it water unless the rehabilitator instructs you to do so in the right way. And you just keep it in a dark, quiet place until it can be taken to a licensed rehabilitator. Not all rehabilitators have a lot of training, even though they might have a permit. So keep that in mind. Keeping them warm and stress-free is probably the biggest tip for even injured animals. So.
Awesome. We have another person that's interested in volunteering with you guys. How can they get involved, or who should they reach out to?
Sure. Oh, and I will say our numbers at the office is 515 233-1379. It's on our website. You can follow us on Facebook. But we have an application on our website that you can fill out and return to us. And we consider this a job, and there's an interview process, and we have at least a 3-month commitment that people need to make working at least one shift a week. And we take that really, it's really important to get that commitment and then have people follow through on them. I can't say enough about that. So if you're committed to it, we'd love to have you. And I get cranky when people aren't committed. So because we count on it and the animals count on it, and it can be a life or death matter. So we'd be happy to talk to anybody who's interested in volunteering. And it's not just volunteering for actual hands-on care. We have administrative work helping me with some things. We have some major fundraising that's going to be coming up. We have a board position or two that's available. We have committee work. So there are different ways for people to get involved other than hands-on wildlife care help. So, yeah, good question.
Awesome. I love it. And then one last question. What are some myths or misconceptions people have about helping injured and orphaned wildlife?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So misconceptions can be that if you handle them, the mother or the parents will abandon them. We have found, it's been proven over and over again, that that is probably a number one myth. The maternal instinct to care for young, even in mammals, is really strong. We can put pups back in the colony. We can give fox cubs or kits back to their family after a broken leg is healed. We can do an awful lot to return these animals to their young. So I would say one of the biggest myths is that aspect. So birds, they do have some sense of smell, but they, again, once those babies are hatched, there's such an investment in taking care of those young that we can put the babies back in the nest. I will say we humans make lousy replacements for the real species, for the real mother, for the real father. So we believe in getting these animals back to their families if at all possible, or even fostering them into another family if necessary. And that does work.
We had another question come in that's kind of along those same lines. If somebody finds, in the spring there's a lot of bunny nests and they don't see the mom come, and like what should they do? Do they assume that it's orphaned, or is there a technique that they can use to determine that?
Yeah, yes. And it sounds like somebody who asked that probably knows the answer to this. So the answer is that's one of the number one species we get calls about that is often not orphaned, because the mom comes back usually twice a day, in the morning and in the evening to nurse her young, and she'll just sort of sprawl out over this shallow scrape in the soil that she has covered with dried grass. The nest is lined with the fur from her breast, and it's just perfect until dogs or cats find it. So, or other wild species. So the way to do that is if you see them strewn about and you think it's your dog or your cat, well, keep your cats and dogs under control. And people seem to be more and more willing to do that. Take them out for the front door if you want to take them on a walk, even if that's a fenced in backyard or something. But so just for the 3 weeks or so that the bunnies are growing up and ready to leave home, it's all it takes is 3 weeks of a little bit of patience with nature, and then they'll be on their own and you won't have to worry. But put them back in the nest, cover it up as best you can, and you can either use yarn or twigs and put a pattern, a logical pattern that you recognize on top of the nest. And then, as I said, the mom will come back, and if she is coming back to nurse her young, she will disturb that pattern. And the other way that you can determine is if the bunnies are active, if they are plump, So there are different ways to visually look at that, but that's the way then that you know that mom's coming back. Um, and there are a lot of ways that you can protect the nest from your dogs that we can talk to people about. Putting temporary fences around it, putting a laundry basket over it with a little cutout so the mom can get in, but your dogs can't. And I know big dogs are an issue, but there are ways that we can attempt to do the right thing here.
Man, well, thank you so much. That's all the questions we have. I wasn't sure if you were finished or not, so I didn't want to interrupt too much.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I've enjoyed
Perfect.
it. I hope my camera holding has not been completely crazy and you got to see a few things.
No, this was fantastic. I again want to give a huge thank you to you for sharing your time, your expertise, your volunteers, and just your heart with us today. And the work being done in Iowa Wildlife Center is truly inspiring, and we are so, so grateful for the care and dedication that goes into protecting these Iowa wildlife every single day. And again, thank you to everybody who joined us today. If you have additional questions, feel free to throw them in the comments box or send us an email and we'll get back to you. I'll be sure to put the website link for the volunteer form and everything in the chat so that you guys can get that. And we hope to see you all again next week. And thank you so much again, Marlene, and have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.